Welcome back to the Fried Egg Golf Podcast. I am your host, Andy Johnson. Today, I'm joined by Joseph LaMagna. We're going to do a major championship kind of breakdown, a little debrief after major championship season and the men's calendar has wrapped up. So I'm joined by Joseph, who was on the ground for the last two men's majors and obviously writes regularly for us on Fried Egg Golf. I apologize for a slightly late release of this episode. I had a bunch of travel this week and a couple things that led to a later release date. But we will be back next week with another pod, and we'll be back on the Wednesday schedule. Anyways, today's podcast is brought to you by our friends at Red Rooster. This is kind of a cool thing. One of my favorite places to go play golf in the winter is Streamsong. On August 13th, they're going to do a raffle, which is a trip to Streamsong. So it's your chance to win the ultimate golf getaway at Streamsong Resort in Florida. This is brought to you by Red Rooster. So get ready for the golf experience of a lifetime from August 13th to October 31st, 2025. You can enter for your chance to win a 2-night golf getaway at Streamsong. Red Rooster is not sending just one winner, but 3 lucky winners, and each can bring a guest. So 6 people are going to go to one of the most iconic American golf resorts. And the trip includes round-trip airfare, round-trip ground transportation to and from the airport, 2 nights at Streamsong's hotel, and 3 rounds of golf, 54 holes, and your meals during the stay, which will add up at Streamsong. So if you want your chance to win, visit redroostergolf.com between August 13th and October 31st to enter this raffle. So Red Rooster, they make golf gloves. They are awesome golf gloves. We sent out to all of our Fried Egg Golf Club members a golf glove last year. It got so much feedback about these. This is the golf glove I use all the time. It is really, really a world-class glove. So if you're looking for a new place to buy gloves, they are an awesome option, but also enter this giveaway for your chance to have kind of a triple lifetime down there to Streamsong. All right, let's get to Joseph LaMagna and let's talk major season. Joseph, let's get it kicked off. Do you want to start most recent, or do you want to start at the start at the Masters, or actually the Players?
We're not doing that. I don't care. Maybe let's go in order. Want to start with the Masters?
Yeah. Well, you're the guest, so you get first pick.
Let's start with the Masters. I think there's nothing. Rory's win, obviously, one of the best tournaments of the 21st century. I do think it's the best tournament that I've ever watched. I don't know if I'm just being a victim of recency bias, but that was one of the coolest tournaments, has to be, of the last 30 years. I think the main thing I'll remember from it, obviously the ups and downs, Rory dumping the wedge in the water on 13, but that iron shot into 15, one of the coolest iron shots I've ever seen in my life, with everything on the line. And I think when you go back to what are the best shots of all time or the best shots of the modern era, that's in the top 5. So that iron shot into 15, I'll remember forever.
You just, the moment in time, and the way, I was on the grounds, and just the way the energy and the atmosphere of the tournament had shifted from after he hits the green on 12. It was like a raucous, like celebratory, like it felt like that, like almost like it was about to turn into a winner's procession down the stretch, where every green, it was just going to be this huge applause and him just kind of waltzing to this career Grand Slam. That's what after he hit the green on 12, that's kind of what it felt like it was about to become. And obviously the shot on 13, the soft bogey on 14, and at that moment it was like shock in the crowd. It was it was dead. It was deflated, and everybody was watching the leaderboards and, reacting to the leaderboards. And he obviously, you saw him, like there was a big weight on 15, and you saw him in the trees. And being there on the ground, it was kind of, what is he going to do? He's got to be laying up, and then he hits this all-time shot, and it pulls him back together. And obviously, there were more ups and downs after that. With 17, 18, the wedge shot, that was a really bad wedge shot, and then the shot in the playoff. But I'll never forget that the way the energy in the crowd shifted with all these different, like, kind of like ups and downs coming down the stretch. It was a wild experience to be there. In terms of where it ranks, I think it's an interesting aspect to talk about where it ranks, because I think from my perspective, the Stenson-Mickelson duel was like, I don't know if we're ever going to see, I don't know if in my lifetime I'm ever going to see like the sheer level of play between two, at the time, elite players going at it, like clearly the best two players in the tournament, just duking it out. I don't think we'll ever see a tournament like that in the next like 25 years, where you just have these two guys that are just clearly playing on a different level, and it was just like trading blows. Like that tournament, it gets underrated. Like this tournament was kind of just like, it was, everything was around Rory and this accomplishment. And it's an interesting question where it ranks, because like 2024 at Pinehurst would have to rank really high in that situation too, because we were saying the same things walking off that, and that was more of a duel.
I'm with you on the Stenson-Mickelson one. That's the other one that comes to mind for me, or the 2008 US Open. Like those for me are the most memorable. But any earlier than that, I was a little young. But I think the difference between Pinehurst, the back and forth nature of this one, that existed at Pinehurst. But the way Rose shot up, I also think you got to tell the whole story of the 2025 Masters with Rory's two double bogeys on Thursday afternoon, and just the entire arc of that tournament. To me, it reached a ceiling much higher than the US Open at Pinehurst. Even Rory starting the day shaky on Sunday, the shot on 7, like it was just drama packed from start to finish. And I feel like Pinehurst really hit that in the last 4 holes, but it wasn't like that all tournament, and it wasn't like that all day.
I think I actually know why you're discrediting Pinehurst. It's because your guy Matthew Pavon was in the final group.
I'm not discrediting Pinehurst. That was a great golf tournament, but I think the Masters is a little higher.
I think this is just because you're bitter that Pavon played well.
I got nothing against Matthew Pavon. Great player. Good player.
What's your second thing about the Masters?
I kind of just hit on it, but I think watching Rory's 2 double bogeys on Thursday afternoon and the whiplash of feeling like the tournament was over, but it was a massive gut punch to his chances. And to then turn around, recover the way that he did, make another bad swing on 13. Resilience, the word that got thrown around all week, but it really was a different side of Rory than I think we've seen. So I don't know that we're going to see too many players make 2 double bogeys on a Thursday and win a major championship. Not many have the birdie making ability to get themselves back in, but I hope people remember the way that tournament started, and not just that finish, because it was an incredible display of bouncing back.
Yeah, I think like the thing I remember talking about Rory's round on Thursday, and it was like he played such great golf outside of those 2 holes, and it was, a lot of people buried him, put the casket underground after that round, saying he's out of it. But like the level of play, he was so dialed in that week. You think about like kind of like the whole tournament and some of the catastrophic mistakes that he made. 15 on Thursday, chipping from over the green from like a place that you're like, okay, he might make a birdie here, chipping that into the water and making a double from just over the green.
Crazy.
The double bogey on 13 in the final round from like a great layup position, just like trying to take double out of play and making a double. And you think about that tournament, it's like, I mean, he played so well that week. He probably should have won by like 6 or 7. He was just by far and away the best player of that week, but he made a couple, huge mistakes that you just can't make. I think that's one of the things you're going to walk away from. And I'm sure both of us will have like Scottie's dominance at the Open as one of our things. But, that Masters performance, it was a playoff, but you could also say it was one of the more dominant performances because Rory won in spite of like some serious mistakes that you usually are unable to win golf tournaments with.
3 double bogeys.
Yeah. My second thing is also, I guess, influence from being on the ground at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst and that Masters is just kind of the Bryson rivalry with Rory, and it set up this Saturday afternoon. It sets up this Bryson Rory final pairing on Sunday, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen? The start that Rory got off to, with hole 1 was kind of a disaster, and the way that Bryson birdies 2, and it's like, oh my God, he just like flipped the whole thing. He's going to win, and then it comes back. Rory birdies 3, kind of gets back on the horse, but overall, I'll never forget watching the 2 on the practice green, and it's like Rory McIlroy putting just like around the green like you would before you play around, right? Like where he's like hitting putts, and it's just like there's no devices out there. He's hitting putts like different lengths and like a really just like normal putting practice routine. And then you have Bryson out there with like his ruler, and he's got like he's measuring stuff, and he's hitting these putts based off of like how far back on the ruler he's going to like random places. And I just thought it was like, it's these polar opposite personalities. Obviously, Bryson has been they play on different tours. Bryson's been a flagship player for the Live Tour. Rory's like, flagship player for the PGA Tour. And they have just these 2 very drastically different approaches to the game. So different personalities, different tours, different approaches to the game. And I think like you could probably say they genuinely see the world differently, right? So you have these just like 2 polar opposites, and it's, honestly, one of my hopes for 2026, can we continue to get this rivalry delivering more? Obviously the fallout, Bryson says, Rory didn't talk to me all round, and it's clear between some of the things that Bryson said. He had that jab at Rory. I'm sure that Rory didn't appreciate during the match at Vegas last year. I'm sure that Bryson didn't appreciate Rory kind of just icing him all Masters Sunday, but that's what your job is, to go into the ring and win a golf tournament. And I think there's like this great kind of icy rivalry. I don't think they're sending each other Christmas cards, and it's like something we want. This is what we want in golf, and my hope is that we get more of this. And we've gotten it at a major 2 years in a row. Could we get a third of this?
I feel like often in golf, rivalries get overstated. Like maybe there's not genuine disdain there, or they match up so infrequently that it's not even a true rivalry. I think Rory and Bryson is a legitimate rivalry, and that there is a little bit of dislike there. I don't know if they're spending a ton of time thinking about each other, but I don't think they're pleased to be paired together. Or maybe they are because they enjoy the rivalry of it, but I don't think they like each other. So the other part of it is that their skill sets are connected. They're two of the longest hitters in golf. So when you get a major championship setup that's favorable to distance, like we could actually see them matched up again, which, it just increases the chances that rivalry could come to a head versus if their skill sets were completely opposite. So I don't know that it's unlikely we'll ever see them in a final group in a major again, but the chances aren't zero.
I think it doesn't seem to be, they aren't friends.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that's the thing is they talked to Rory after the Open about Scottie, and I couldn't be happier for him. He's a great person, is what he said. And that's not the basis for a great rivalry. Is when there's mutual admiration for the other one from a personal standpoint. I grew up a Bulls fan. The Bulls-Knicks rivalry, the Bulls-Pacers rivalries in the 90s were just rooted in the Bulls and Pistons, obviously, in the early 90s. They're rooted in this just general dislike for each other. That, there is a level to that. And it's I don't think, no matter who it is, there's going to be that kind of contentious rivalry with Scottie, because Scottie's just generally likable. He doesn't do anything that's going to upset people. But where Rory, will speak his mind in press conferences and, and kind of tell you, he's authentic. He'll tell you how he feels about things. And Bryson, kind of being Bryson will rub people certain ways. And I think you think about it as Bryson's ascendance and ability to play at Augusta. Obviously that opens that up every year as a potential. I think next year, if you wanted to circle another one where it could happen, Aronimink, I think will set up very well for long hitters next year. So a Bryson, Rory, Aronimink duel could be something that you look at.
That would be incredible. Just getting them in the final group again this year. You're right. That should be one of the lasting takeaways. The excitement everyone had on Saturday night, seeing them paired together. But if we get them again, every time in the future now, that's going to be appointment viewing. Even if it's not a major, but I don't know what other tournament. You could get it at the Ryder Cup. But
Ryder Cup, yeah. That's, I don't know. I might put somebody else against Rory. I might put Andrew Novak. You think he went toe to toe with him at Oakmont on Sunday. So
is he the Rory killer?
All right, let's move on to the PGA. What is one of your takeaways from the PGA Championship?
We've seen it with Scottie before. The late Saturday afternoon charge where he finished eagle, birdie, par, birdie, birdie to just completely grab the tournament. I can remember I was in a wedding that Saturday night, so I had to be looking at my phone and tracking that Saturday evening and had it recorded. And that tournament was so up for grabs. I could not believe looking back at my phone and then seeing how quickly the tournament had changed. And this is what Scottie does. He's done it at Players in the past. He's done it at the Masters. Unlike anybody else in the modern era besides Tiger, taking a tournament that's in doubt and just grabbing it and showing that nobody else really has a chance. And no one else really did have a chance from then on in. He stumbled a little on Sunday, but that Saturday afternoon charge, I feel like that's just something at this point that we've come to expect with Scottie. He did it at Memorial this year. All right, the tournament kind of hanging in the balance. Late Saturday afternoon, it's Scottie's. So that's what I'll always remember from the PGA.
Yeah, to that point with Scottie, I think you could make a lot of cross sport references, and just if you're watching the NBA, it's that kind of third quarter run where a super duper star just he'll take over and score 12 points in 4 minutes, and it's just whoa. What just happened, and the lead opens up and it feels like a gulf. You see this all the time. And I think with Scottie, it is it's the ability to rise to a certain moment and right when that tournament is gettable, and the way he did it too on like the hardest holes on the golf course, where like 16, 17, 18 were brutal holes, and to do it where he just took control. Obviously the 14 and 15 were the gettable holes on that back nine, but like to just seize control and do it, where I think that's like one of the things you see from Scottie, and maybe one of like the marks of greatness is his ability to hit shots close on holes where nobody hits shots close all day. It's like, well, nobody's hit it close to this all day. And then it's like, oh, then Scottie hits it to 12 feet and rolls the putt in. He has just this knack to make extraordinarily difficult shots look routine. And he operates, I think the irons are just, I don't think enough gets talked about, and I don't really love that expression. But like his iron dominance does not get talked about enough. How good the irons are, like how generational the iron talent is. I mean, you think about 5 years ago, before we were in the Scottie era, like the excitement about Colin Morikawa and how he was, replicating Scottie, or the excitement about Will Zalatoris's iron play. And it's, Scottie is just in a different stratosphere. And when you hit great iron shots, great approach shots, it's like hard to play bad golf.
He's also leading the tour this year, strokes gained off the tee. Like you could make the argument that Scottie's driving ability is not talked about enough. Like, so I think that, again, 2 years ago, all anybody said correctly was if Scottie ever learns how to putt average, he's going to win everything. And to your point, now we are seeing, especially on the most demanding setups where he can separate himself tee to green, that's what's happening. He learned how to putt a little bit. He's killing everybody.
Yeah. It's I like the call out of that ability to just kind of like burst out, right? Like the ability to, like in a blink of an eye, put a tournament away. My big thing was actually from Sunday. I think that what he did on Saturday set him up to have this wonderful cushion. And we haven't really seen Scottie Scheffler out of sorts, tee to green, in a big moment. And we saw it for 9 holes on Sunday. And I thought, like, when we look back on his career, one of the things that I will always remember is that Sunday at Quail Hollow, because that was a moment where he could have like given one away. And once you give one away, I think that winning them gets a lot more difficult because there's way more doubt in your head. Golf is a sport that it preys on your insecurities and your anxiety. And for Scottie Scheffler to play the front nine he played, to have Jon Rahm catch him on the back nine, and to have him go from hitting it just horrendously, it was about as bad as I've ever seen him hit the ball, to clicking in, finding something, and then playing a nearly flawless back nine to win the tournament, put pressure back on Jon Rahm, who, it's like these majors are hinging on so many moments, and that major, like the major moment, one of them I'll remember is that the lip out Rahm had on 13, where he hit an incredibly great putt, an insanely great putt, and it's just, if that ball's going 2% slower, it goes in. And then he doesn't birdie the short par 4, doesn't birdie the par 5, and it's over again. But Scottie being able to gather himself, collect himself, and fix the problem on the fly, that's another just sign of greatness. This is the self-reliance, not, we see so many guys run to the range, and obviously Scottie works with Randy Smith all the time. But when you reach the level of being able to fix something on course, that is self-reliance and that's just another aspect of just understanding and greatness.
It's kind of crazy that you're talking about him having one of the most uncharacteristically poor 9-hole stretches of his career, and he won the tournament by 5 like that.
Yeah, I think the PGA at Quail Hollow leaderboard is like more misrepresentative of the event than any. Sure. Like that's going to be one where you look back on it, and Jon Rahm, I think, what did he finish, like 7th? It's like such an absurd. Like he finished second in my mind, because he came down the stretch and said, "I'm trying to win this tournament," and made some mistakes that cost him, finishing second.
Fair. I think to your point about him on the range, I think one thing from this year, and I'm curious if you agree, but Scottie seems to be. We hear so often about players that they always need to be working on something, like that they get bored and they almost have to fix their mind on some kind of change. And Scottie seems to fall in love with routine and simplicity about as much as anybody, to where that doesn't feel like as much of a risk, that he's going to always need to be changing something like Tiger did. And I think even Rory has struggled with motivation at times. I don't really worry about Scottie struggling in that same way. And that kind of makes me think that his dominance could persist beyond a lot of players who maybe their attention spans are a little bit different, or they want to be making changes all the time. Do you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, I think the simplicity of golf for him. I think like you look at him, and there are other signs that point to this as well. It's he had that truck forever that Jim Nantz bought, but he had that same truck forever when he's worth tens of millions of dollars. It's the idea that, I think his faith builds some consistency in his life. Like that he does, like he's very devoted to that, and that builds consistency in his life. I would agree with that. I think one of the harder things, the more underrated hard thing about tour life is if you're a curious person, the routine of going to these same places, these same courses over like 12 to 15, 20 years of your life becomes a little mundane. It's like, well, I'm in this suburb, and you have to come up with ways to retain your interest. And I think,
where are you going with this? It feels like a backhanded compliment.
It's not a backhanded compliment.
Well, I'm just saying, Scottie's not curious.
I think he's still young in his career, right?
Yeah.
I think like this is one of the things that the underrated aspects of golf, and maybe why we don't see a lot of careers that are great for 10 plus years, is there has to be hyper competitiveness. There has to be extraordinary discipline. There has to be a drive to want to be great. You have to be in it for like the right reasons to have an extended career in golf, especially now with how much money they make. It's very easy. We've seen it. I mean, let's look at Liv. Let's look at who Liv spent a bunch of money on. And most of them got their big check and have kind of checked out. And I think this is an interesting, piece of golf that maybe doesn't get discussed enough is the redundancy of the sport. I mean, going and working every day on your game to see like the most marginal gains. You're talking about devoting hundreds of hours in a year to chipping in an effort to gain a tenth of a shot, be a tenth of a shot better this year than last year. It's a wild pursuit.
And to your point, we know what next year's schedule looks like, and we're going to know what the next year's schedule looks like. It's the same golf courses. The same events are going to be signature events.
Same hotels.
Same hotels. And Scottie seems to be one of the few people who doesn't have any issue with that. Just shows up to Craig Ranch and wins comfortably.
Yeah, it's kind of it's wild. What's your second thing?
Mud balls. Mud balls at the PGA Championship. I feel like now that we're a little bit removed, it's easy to forget about that. But that was a big talking point for the first couple days.
Fair police were out.
The fair police were out. Scottie and Xander both having some trouble on 16, attributed that to mud balls. You had some players coming out and saying, you just got to learn how to deal with it. I think especially older players or players who are no longer active saying, hey, mud balls are part of the sport. Other guys complaining about it, not throwing an asterisk on the championship necessarily, but having a real problem with having to navigate playing championship golf with some mud. Spieth was really upset about it, talked about how at the Masters, you're not allowed to talk about it. So it kind of brought mud balls to the forefront of the conversation and sort of signaled where people stand on that issue.
I mean, water moisture in the fairway was a big theme of two major championships. Obviously, Oakmont. It is. I think like one of the things that got stoked this fire too was like Kevin Kisner's commentary at the U.S. Open about like, listen, on the PGA Tour we can just get the ball in our hand and move it to a dry spot and hit it from there. I think it's one of the things that sets majors apart. It's one of the things that's, in the identity, the famous, Daniel Berger walking up to the first tee at the Masters and asking if they're playing ball, lift, clean, and place. And then be like, no. I think, golf is an unfair sport. It's inherently unfair. And I think the position of the pros, and Scottie talked about this after one of the rounds, like we work our entire lives incredibly hard to control the ball, and the mud ball, creates a situation where we have no control over it. That's part of golf. Like, bunkers used to not be raked, I think like the CB McDonald line was the best kind of bunker is like one that looks like a herd of elephants ran through it. And I think that, over time, this is, a tournament player perspective is like this idea of fairness should come through. The more I miss, the more I'm penalized, that type of concept, which I can relate to. But like there is like a nature part of golf, just like life, is how you overcome the unexpected speed bumps in your round, and that was something that mud balls presented, and it'll be hopefully. I mean, we don't want tournaments where mud balls happen. Everybody wants these to have great weather where you get that kind of firm playing surface and the ball bounces and the fairways are much more demanding, but when it does happen, it provides a nice little added element of chance and excitement to a telecast when the softness of a golf course makes it a little bit less unpredictable.
Another thing I think you're hitting on, there's a clear difference in how players play in major championships than in regular tour golf. Like that is borne out statistically, and there's a lot of conversation about why does that exist? Like what is the difference? Why do some players play awesome golf on the PGA Tour on Live, but then their game doesn't translate to major championships? I think a part of it is comfort and just how routine oriented all of these golfers are, showing up to the same courses, like you've mentioned, showing up to the same hotels, their bodies being on the same clock every single week. And major championships just provide a level of discomfort between, yes, obviously the pressure, but also other variables like mud balls that you wouldn't be playing in regular tour golf, harder setups, all of those things. I think it's being thrown out of the comfort of your routine. And that's a big lesson for me, not necessarily specific to one of these majors, not a big two takeaway from one of these majors, but I think that's been more clear after watching all four of these this year and seeing some of those golfers, the usual suspects who show up week in and week out in tour golf and their game doesn't translate to a major.
It is a piece of majors where you hear these guys talk about majors, and so many of them are trying to make them feel like just another week. And you see a lot of puzzling. Why doesn't this guy play well in majors? And it's different. but also the heightened expectations and weight of them. There's only 4 of them. And at the end of the year, like, we aren't going to talk about who won the Cognizant or who won at the Byron Nelson, but we are going to maybe we will talk about who won the Byron Nelson because of the dominance on a course that's very hard to separate. But at the end of the year, what is going to be talked about are the majors, the Ryder Cup, maybe the Players sneaks in. Even Riv, like this great event on the PGA Tour, does not really have relevance after, at the end of the year. It's kind of, who won at Riv? Like that's, it's not talked about. Nothing on tour really is talked about. And that's like maybe one of the tour's biggest problems is nothing at the end of the year feels like it is like a seminal moment on tour, or in the world of men's pro golf.
And I think a lot of that's routine. You
ready for mine here?
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I have here. I've got Ben Griffin.
Wow. Okay.
This was just like the Ben Griffin season. This is the part of the Ben Griffin season. Him and Andrew Novak win the Zurich a couple of weeks before this. He finishes T8 at the PGA. It was a super impressive performance from him. And then he goes and he wins the next week at Charles Schwab. He finishes second at Memorial. Should have probably won that golf tournament. Could have put it away on Saturday, but kind of got like a 5 or 6 shot lead, and then all of a sudden Scottie comes up. Speaking of another Scottie kind of performance, the way kind of put that tournament to bed. But like, it had a good duel with Scottie. Genuinely good duel with Scottie. That was a good tournament. And then finishes 10th at the US Open. And it's like, I think like these are the types of runs for a young player that build confidence and create, I'm not saying a star, but how somebody becomes a household name. It's not one performance. It is stacking performances over a concentrated time period. And him doing that, this might be the best he ever plays in his life. And that's fine. But he was a genuine, like, big time story and one of the 5 best players in the world for a 6 to 8 week period in golf. And I think like the PGA was where this run really started to take hold.
You're right. I mean, when we got to Memorial and he was leading, you were making the joke, and many others, like, is Ben Griffin the best player in the world? And he kind of was. He wasn't better than Scottie, but he kind of was like playing at a level over a short period of time, not sustained, but a short period of time that matched up with just about anybody. So I do think this is the year that Ben Griffin became a legitimate PGA Tour player, right? He became, I'm not going to use the word star, but when we look at the Ryder Cup this year, he's one of the Americans you have the most confidence in, which is both a testament to his game and some of the weakness of the back end of Team USA. But Ben Griffin is not doing this in a fluky way. He's picked up a lot of speed. He's an excellent driver of the golf ball now. He gains shots with his irons basically every week, so the ball striking is stable. Yeah, this is a story of a steady ascent and a player who's 29, kind of peaking at the right time, and we could see a really good 2 to 3 year run. Maybe I'd be surprised if it lasts much longer than that. But
I think it's important, the Ben Griffin the Ben Griffin run here feels very like Max Homa-y in terms of the age range,
sure,
like how they got there, like a slow burn. And this is the thing about pro golfers and men's pro golf in particular is there are these different buckets of players. You have your generational guys that are going to burn hot and for a long time, and that's Rory McIlroy right now.
Scottie, I think.
I mean, Scottie, we'll see what Scottie's in year 5, right? Rory's in he's approaching 20 years of being like a top 15 player in the world. It's wild,
Crazy.
And like golf thrives when you have the 20-year guys, because where superstars are built in this sport is over, because it's, what we're seeing from a dominance standpoint from Scottie is building his star very rapidly. But where superstars are built is stacking 3 to 4 win seasons, like 2 to 5 win seasons over 10 plus years, and I think so you have those 20 year guys, you have your 10-year guys, 5-year guys, 2 to 3 year guys where they're top 15 players, and they're different levels of players in that sphere. But being a top 10 player for 2 to 3 years is you are a top 20 player for 2 to 3 years. You are absolutely a bona fide great player, and there aren't many of those. And a great question is can Ben Griffin be one of those guys?
And I think the Ryder Cup will be a strong litmus test.
Do you think he's going to make the team?
Assuming he makes that team, he's in good position to make it as of now.
It'll be that's undertone of the whole year and all these majors is the Ryder Cup. All right, let's take a quick break and talk about our partner Maui Nui. Right now, Maui Nui is offering a free 12-pack of their jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more. If you remember, Maui Nui is our partner. They make the healthiest red meat you'll ever eat. It's 100% wild harvest and stress-free process that delivers the highest protein to calorie ratio, up to 53% more than grass-fed beef. This is venison. Their sugar-free peppered stick, for example, packs 10 grams of protein at just 55 calories. These are ideal snacks for your golf bag. One of the crazes in health right now is protein. This is a great way to get lean, healthy protein, and they taste great. So if you're interested in getting some really healthy protein, I would recommend their sticks. I'd recommend their ground venison product. Their medallions are great for dinners. Go to MauiNuiVenison.com. That's Maui Nui, MauiNui venison.com/egg to grab yours. So that right now they're offering that free 12-pack of jerky sticks with your first order of $79 or more at MauiNuiVenison.com. All right, let's get back to Joseph LaMagna. Let's move on to the U.S. Open.
Big takeaway from me was course setup and how far we've come to where players weren't even complaining that much about the setup, despite it being a pretty gimmicky setup. And I think that I'm always going to remember what that setup looked like. The length of the rough, how much better it was to be in bunkers than to be in the rough. And players not even really complaining about it, kind of accepting it as part of the Oakmont test. There was frustration, but I feel like we've come a long way from 5 to 6 years ago when players were very quick to skewer the USGA for any setup that they didn't love. There were a few complaints this year, but it was a ridiculous setup. And I think a point in time where hopefully most people can realize how far equipment has come, that to protect a golf course, to protect the concept of par, you have to do something as ridiculous as the setup was at Oakmont this year. And if that golf course had stayed firm and fast for all 4 days, which it did not, it rained, it would have been completely out of control on the weekend. And it would have been fun for people who like carnage, but it would not have been a particularly attractive golf tournament to watch. It still wasn't with the rain, but I really hope we can appreciate the lengths the golf course has to go to these days to even try and protect the concept of par. And that was on full display at Oakmont.
Yeah, I think protecting par. I think the other takeaway I had about setup that week was when you try and protect par, and that's your core kind of goal, you then kind of restrict the ability for great players to play great.
Agree.
And I think that's where I had a issue with the Oakmont setup. Was I didn't feel like if somebody played a great round, that they could actually score, have a great score, because it was impossible to keep balls on certain fairways. You saw this with the back nine, and I'm all for hard holes. I'm all for challenging the best players in the world, but you saw the back nine. You could see guys get going with 10, 11, 12, 13, and then you get to 14. And you could get another one there, and then you get to 15, and it's you just can't hit this fairway. And it's 500 yard par 4, and the fairway's unhittable. So you're either in this like crazy thick rough just off the fairway on the right, and you're making a bogey probably, unless you get up and down.
Super good lie.
Or you hit it left in the bunker and you're going to make a bogey there. And it was just like a speed bump. It was just effectively like a restrictor plate versus, you know what 500 plus yard par 4s are great at doing? Generally, if the fairway's hittable, is sussing out who's playing really well. Because the player that's playing really well can hit the drive in the fairway, and then they can separate themselves with a long iron from the fairway, to a challenging green. Maybe they make a birdie there, and this is a hole that routinely is bogeyed. But the way that hole was set up was, I think, if I remember correctly offhand, it was like the fairway was being hit by like 25% of the field.
It was low.
And it's like, okay, this is silly. This is the idea. It's the idea of a test that's not passable. You're almost getting lucky, I do want to be, clear here. The way you had to hit that fairway was hitting a draw into the fairway, which cants left to right for a righty. Now you had to hit a draw into like a 5-yard pocket, which just not, so like, to me, that was the other, beyond like the technology takeaway, the other thing that was firmed up for me, and you saw this with like the pure chaos on Sunday. I'll do this one first. The chaos on Sunday, where you have basically 20 players that could win in the last hour. That is a product. It's great for television. I mean, maybe not great for television because they couldn't even keep up with how many players. I mean, Bob McIntyre had like no shots shown of him all day Sunday, and it's like all of a sudden he's playing 18. It's like, wait, this guy might win.
JJ Spawn was like dropped from coverage. Yes. He made a few bogeys early.
But this is all product of, okay, we're trying to protect par, and by doing that, what we're doing is we are jeopardizing the merits of a championship because we're not allowing great players to separate with skill. Scottie was in the mix. He obviously had a bad week on the greens, which held him back. But the idea of what he did at Quail Hollow, I don't think was really available at what he did at Quail Hollow and Portrush wasn't really available at Oakmont. The ability for like just a dominant player to take over in a moment, because the golf course just did not allow you to consistently play well.
And in defense of the USGA, that's what you had. That's the way you had to set the golf course up if you cared about protecting par. Maybe you shouldn't, right?
They cared about it. It was, I agree. The entire media day was about it. The entire pre-tournament chat that they had was about par.
I'm with you. And you just can't both care about par and put on a golf tournament that is reasonable at Oakmont, right? And this is intuitive. This is a golf course that was built 120 years ago that has been lengthened. The greens haven't been significantly expanded, but they've been turned way up, and the rough's been grown way up. Like, we're just out of scale. So
one of the things that frustrated me is like the rhetoric of why it was set up that way was, this is what phones would have wanted.
I don't know if that's true.
And like, what I would say back to that is, this guy built one of the greatest golf courses in the world. in an era where the ball went like 230 yards. So the fairways were wider when he built it than they are now. The ball went shorter, so misses were less wide. Correct. So fairways were very findable in this era. I just believe that phones would understand skill and want to present something that deeply rewarded skill. And to me, like, one of my big takeaways with the weather and with the presentation, this tournament was a complete fluke.
Close to a fluke. I mean, JJ Spawn's a great player, but Sunday was complete chaos.
It was complete, like, we don't really know. Like, JJ Spawn won, and I want to be respectful. He won the tournament. He had an incredible finish, but we walk away from that week having no clue who played best that week.
Yeah, it's a tough way of framing. I don't know if I would fully go, we don't know who played best, but I agree. Like, some of the shots he hit on Sunday were horrendous, and normally you cannot get away with doing that at a major championship unless you're doing something magical the rest of the tournament. And he wasn't really. It was just a lot of water between the club face and the ball.
Yes.
Things coming down to what kind of lies you got in the rough. Again, to your point about would phones have wanted this, phones wouldn't have wanted players hoping their balls ended up in the bunker versus ending up in the rough. And that was a lot of the championship.
He would have gone with furrowed rakes.
Maybe they should.
Honestly, the setup would have been better with furrowed rakes.
Would have been pretty cool.
I guess would love, you know, what would be amazing is if they could go to that furrowed. And for people that don't know what the furrowed rakes are, Oakmont used to use these like large tine rakes. So like the large tine would create these like rivets in the bunkers. So your ball would maybe sit up on one of the high points and have like a lie that you would be accustomed to today in a bunker, or it might sit down and it would act as almost like a buried lie. And it was all chance. I would be fascinated with Oakmont. Go with very low rough, that not low rough, but like manageable rough that entices players to take risks when they're out of position, hitting into these crazy greens that are well protected with bunkers that are a complete chance, and that they are desperately trying to stay out of bunkers. I think this is one of the underrated parts of the Open Championship, is how much players fear the pot bunkers because of the penalty that they exact. And in American golf, one of the issues with the US Open, I think, has become that bunkers are so routine. They're so matter of fact, easy, predictable places to dump balls for pros. I mean, they are so good out of bunkers. And at Oakmont, if you reverse that dynamic where the rough was like, okay, I might have a good chance here, but I also could get in a lot of trouble. And coupled with the bunkers being completely terrifying, would be a fascinating golf tournament.
The other part you could maybe restore would be that rough aprons aren't keeping balls out of bunkers. That there would be an element. I mean, it was crazy to look at bunker surrounds, fairway bunkers, where there's these massive, massive tufts of rough preventing balls, playing as buffers from balls going into bunkers. I think the counter argument to your point, Andy, is if you cut the rough down, not too, I know you're not saying cut it all the way down, but like if it's not firm, then golfers are going to be able to kind of spray it just because it's going to play so wide versus an Open Championship, which is reliably firm. But that's just a difficulty of hosting a tournament in Pittsburgh. It's going to rain.
I think that's it is going to rain. It's historically rained there. It's historically been soft. Would the bunkers provide some of that fear of spraying?
And I think that'd be a cool setup.
All right. I guess what's your second thing at the US Open?
We kind of hit on it. Just the chaos of Sunday and seeing Sam Burns shot on 15 way left. Adam Scott playing poorly. That was a crapshoot. And JJ Spahn's putt on 18 really salvaged what was otherwise a really bad golf tournament. I feel like people are going to look back on this somewhat favorably because how cool that moment was. If JJ Spahn doesn't make that putt, that's like one of the most forgettable majors of the last 15 years.
It's I mean, the putt was amazing. I try not to cheer, and I like threw my hands up. I was like, I could not cheer when he made that putt. And I think that's like one of my other takeaways is I think watching somebody achieve something that is, you know, a true surprise is an amazing thing. I mean, just JJ Spawn's, you know, career coming into this was he had played so few major championships, you know, and he had such poor results in major championships. You're talking about playing five PGA championships, missing 2 cuts, and the best finish was T35. Only had played 2 Masters, you know, T23 and the 50th. He had played. This was his second U.S. Open, and then because he won this U.S. Open, he played his first Open Championship. You know, you're talking about a very inexperienced. This was a win that came out of nowhere. Where it ends up, like whether it's a complete fluke, where it like lands is like totally dependent on what does the next 5 years of JJ Spawn's career look like. And I think that's like just a compelling aspect of this is you know, the setup and the way the championship was approached. If we're at Oakmont in 10 years and we look back and JJ Spawn's won 10 more times, they're going to be really confident in the setup and the way they approach that tournament. Now, if in 10 years we look back and JJ Spawn's won one more time, does that like lead to questions about how we presented the golf course?
Which is a little results oriented in that Victor Hovland was right in that tournament too and could have won, and we wouldn't be talking about a fluky winner at all. So I think there are a lot of names.
There are a lot of names. I think like Scott. If Bob McIntyre or JJ Spawn wins, it's, you know.
Oh, that is pretty disrespectful to Bob McIntyre. Those golfers are not in the same class. JJ Spawn's great. He's not on Bob McIntyre's level.
All right, the Open, last major of the year.
Biggest takeaway from me: Scottie Scheffler is so much better than everybody else right now. And that was clear before the Open Championship, but nobody's close to Scottie. If he has his B+ game, there's no one that can even really compete with his B+ game. I think Rory can, Bryson can, but we don't know how consistently they're necessarily going to show up and put in an A-level performance at a major. If Scottie's got his A- game, nobody can keep up with him. And he was even a little shaky he hit some uncharacteristically poor shots during this Open Championship, still blew the field out. And some of that's a little bit of a fluky putting week. He was second in putting for the week, which you can't always expect with Scottie. But if he has this putter figured out even a little bit, nobody can keep up with his A game.
I would say that he had his A+ game or A game this week.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think what's interesting, or what I think with Scottie, his floor is so high. I think we see his B game more than we see any other player's B game. And what really is the variable, because of the consistency from tee to green, is the putter. And the putter, if he's at 0 in terms of putting, if he's field average at putting, it's his B game. At Oakmont, we saw probably his C+ game because the putter was cold. And at Portrush, his putter was hot. I mean, I said this to somebody, but the reality of him at Portrush was he could have had maybe the worst week we've seen him hit the ball tee to green, and he probably would have won because of how well he putted.
He won by 4.
He was dominant on the greens, which is just, you know, I don't think you're obviously putting's the most variable skill. You know, one week to the next it's why you don't see the top putter at the top, the top ball striking steady. It's consistent. You can rely on it week in, week out, which is why he's there. Plus, like the short game. But I think from my standpoint with Scottie, the dominance really showed in the approach to the final round. He went out and was going to step on people's throats. Also, tactically, I thought it was brilliant. Where the one place he was getting in trouble that week was when the wind was off his left with the driver. He's hitting 3-woods on those holes to just have a club that he can hold up against that wind, and then just not giving away shots. The saves on 6 or on 7 or 6 and 7 were remarkable.
Crazy. And again, I felt like the putter it wasn't fluky. It's not like putts were banging the back of the cup and going in. Scottie looked really comfortable on those greens. And I do think it was a glimpse of essentially, I don't want to say invoke prime Tiger, but I think it was a look at like, this is about as good as golf gets in 2025. I don't think anybody else can play on that level.
Yeah, he in the next couple of years, they're going to be. It's must-see TV. I think Scottie lacks a little bit of the joie, the suaveness, the presence, that the gravitational pull of a lot of superstars. But the on-play dominance or the on-course dominance can make up for a lot of that over the next couple of years if he stacks a few of these. I think getting to multiple major season was a big hurdle. All the greats have had multiple major seasons, and getting that second major, it's amazing what there's so few majors. What multi-win seasons do to your legacy, because the difference between 3 and 4 is huge. And now he's set up for the potential career Grand Slam at Shinnecock. That's a golf course if you made a golf course in the lab for Scottie Scheffler at Shinnecock Hills.
I think this was the year Scottie went from this guy's really good. Comparisons to Tiger seem reasonable, but who knows, to this is going to be a top 10 player of all time. And I do feel confident that it is much more likely than not Scottie Scheffler will be a top 10 player of all time.
Well, I mean, like a footnote on the year is what does this year look like if he doesn't have the hand injury? That
probably wins another one.
You think he wins the Masters?
Oh, I just meant another tournament. I don't know about the Masters, but
he might win 1 or 2 more tournaments. I mean, he got off to a slow start and was just not what we were accustomed to seeing from Scottie on a stretch of tournaments that he usually dominates. The Scottsdale, that swing
right
there.
Bay Hill.
So, yeah, Bay Hill.
And he's got multiple Players Championships and an Olympics and like multiple memorials. It's crazy what his resume looks like now.
Well, there's one. You could also say this era of dominance, like not to. This is a little bit devil's advocate. This has been a very, very pro Scottie podcast here. I think but if you're and part of this is like Sean Martin, friend of the pod, was like you got to stop mentioning the Open. Like at this point, like you're looking for reasons like why something might not happen because it feels like you're going there. Like part of the interest is why it might not happen, but Scottie's run has happened when, they went to these smaller field signature events in response to LIV. So the fields are small that he's beating. And I'm not saying, but what this does is it reduces the number of players that could just have like an out of body experience for a week. It basically is half the size. And then you took substantial amount of stars from the tour that could, when they have their A game, be somebody that stands in and takes down Scottie. And I think I don't listen, I don't think this is a factor that would prohibit Scottie from being an all-timer, right? But I do think this is a factor that would say, hey, maybe he wouldn't have as many wins here.
I actually kind of disagree. My counter would be, that's true, but also 5 years ago, we didn't put all of the best players in the world in signature events either, and Scottie's dominating those. And when he goes to major championships, he's winning by 4 or 5 shots as well. You can go ahead, throw Bryson, Rahm, Neiman, throw some of those guys in signature event fields. Maybe they pick off 1 or 2 over the last couple of years, but Scottie's still an Olympian. I think he'd still have the same number of players, championships, and memorials. Like, I think his resume would look just about the same. So it's a good point. It's fair. Maybe Bryson, he has that upside that he could pick off a win that Scottie grabbed, but I don't think his resume looks a whole lot different without these live guys.
My big question would be Rahm.
Rahm's a fair one, but he hasn't even won on live.
I think there's the deterioration is the other piece of this with what's happened to so many of the big names that's gone over there, and how their games just really deteriorated. Right?
And the question, I guess, on Rahm, which maybe we don't have time to get into, but is that a function of going to live, or was he not one of these? Like, what is the state of Jon Rahm? He had a disappointing year this year in majors. It was fine. He got in the mix at the PGA, but is Jon Rahm going to be somebody that 2 years from now has that staying power and he's racking up top 5s in major championships, right? To what extent do you attribute the deterioration in performance to going to live versus Jon Rahm's overall quality as a golfer?
All right. Well, let's get into I had you pull up disappointing players. I have some disappointing players. Real quick, my second thing about the Open was Chris Gotterup, just the run he was on. What was your second thing? It's still fresh in everybody's mind.
Just, it's really hard to coordinate the global golf calendar, but getting big golf tournaments in somebody's home country is extremely important. And the scenes of Rory McIlroy, I will never, ever forget. Maybe when Hideki Matsuyama is a great player, like, you make an effort to get a strong field in Japan. Like, maybe when Jon Rahm is a great player, you have to make some kind of effort to elevate the Spanish Open. But again, that requires a lot of coordination from different tours, from governing bodies. But I think there should be a concerted effort to recreate those kinds of scenes, because it was something special. And I think the legends of the game deserve to be celebrated that way.
I think that's an interesting point. And if you think about the new PGA Tour CEO, Brian Rolab, his experience with the NFL and making it a global sport, you could look at if Ludwig, ascends to an elite level, how do we get one event in Sweden? Because what that's going to do is it's going to attract a fan base of PGA Tour viewers that you might not have gotten, But it's I think, like, the level of player that presents is so rare that you could make it an exception. I think that's a good idea. Let's do disappointing players, then we'll do impressive. We had the other category I had was impressive non-winners. Who is your most disappointing major championship season for?
I gotta go with Brooks Koepka. I think we've got somebody who's won a bunch of major championships, who for the first time in his career missed the cut in 3 of 4 majors. Did finish T12 at the U.S. Open. Was kind of a factor early, but then wasn't. Kind of bombed out. And not all missed cuts are equal. Brooks missed these cuts by a lot. He missed by 6 shots at the Open, 8 shots at the PGA. Finished, I believe, bogey quad to miss the cut at the Masters.
That's a hard cut to miss too.
It's pretty hard to miss. So at this point, Brooks is pretty far removed from any impressive performances in major championships. It's just tough to look at his body of work, some of the injuries he's been through. I don't know what his competitive career looks like. I never want to doubt Brooks Koepka, but there's a chance we're kind of done.
Well, I believe the rumors are that his contract's up with LIV. What does next year look like for Brooks?
It's a great question.
He's obviously the 2023 PGA. He is exempt in majors for the foreseeable future. I would imagine if he doesn't play on LIV, there will be a return to the PGA Tour. I'm very curious what that will look like. And how could he be the player that they build the pathway back for, in terms of this is what you do. Brooks, he's a fascinating character in the history of golf, just because of the dominance in majors and then the mediocrity given his level of talent and skill set in regular events. We've really never seen anything like it. And I still think he can pick off another one. But I think the days of him being a consistent force are probably over. And I think like a lot of it goes to, injuries and everything. Like when you think back to 2018, 2017, 2016 time period, he was the top of the top in terms of driving a golf ball. And I don't think he's there anymore. And this is the difference between being a top 10 driver of the golf ball and a top 40 driver of the golf ball. If you slip down to 35, that's a huge difference. I think people don't value what being like an elite skill and how hard it is to keep yourself at that elite level, in particular with the driver.
And how strong of a signal good driving is, right? You go look at Chris Gotterup's stats and when he started to win and what his driving performance looked like coming into those wins. Like that, it's generally going to tell you the state of a player's swing. Yeah,
I would agree with that. All right. My most disappointing is Collin Morikawa. Listen, like the year started and it was, is Morikawa part of this discussion with Rory, Scottie, Bryson, at the top of the game is in Xander, obviously. And I think Xander would be, just gets a pass because of the injury. He's just getting a pass from me. I'm not going to grade this, but it started.
He also wasn't bad this year.
Yeah, it wasn't great though. Like never thought he was going to win a tournament.
Right.
Collin Morikawa, you just expected way more from him. And, he hasn't won in a couple years. You look at his majors and he won the PGA with you talk about a tournament that it was completely up for grabs on Sunday. And he hit, I was talking to a golf architect and it got the discussion of the 16th or 17th at Harding Park. Was it 16 or 17?
The reachable
par 4.
I believe that's 16.
I think it was 16. Yeah. It came up and it was like, oh, Morikawa hit this iconic shot. The par 4 created it. And the architect said, I think that just was like a player. He was the one player that shot fit perfectly. Everybody was in between driver or 3-wood. And Morikawa, it was a perfect stock driver cut, like perfect golf hole for him. And he hit it to a couple feet. And you think about that, it's like it gives him 2 majors. Like, how would we think about Collin Morikawa if he had 1 major? How would we, and all of this happened in a period of time when there really weren't many fans. And you think about it, it's just, listen, I'm like the biggest Collin Moore. I was, out of college. I thought Morikawa, Matt Wolff, Hovland, and Morikawa. I was always saying Morikawa is the best of the 3 of them. We look back now. I think Morikawa's had the best career by far. Victor Hovland, where they go the next 5 years. Matt Wolff, I think we know where he's at. But that Morikawa Hovland debate will be interesting the next 5 years. But for him, no wins in a couple of years. He was on a crazy trajectory.
His Open Championship record is kind of ridiculous now. Win missed cut, T16, missed cut. It's kind of crazy.
I think he's a really good player, but he's not a superstar, if that makes sense.
And I will say that's one of my biggest scenes I will always remember from this year is watching him struggle on the range at Royal Portrush after his first round. It is one of the biggest struggle sessions I've ever seen out of a professional golfer, and Colin looks like he's not in a good spot right now. So I'm with you. I think I would take Colin's next 5 years over Collins, but we'll see.
What's who else do you have on your disappointing list?
Within a similar vein, actually, to Colin, Justin Thomas finished T36, missed cut, T34. He has one top 30 finish in a major championship in his last 14 major starts. One top 30 finish. And I think similarly to what you're saying with Colin about the two majors and how would we think about him differently if he didn't grab Harding Park, how would we think about Justin Thomas differently if he didn't win that at Southern Hills? That was kind of a fluky golf tournament. He was way out of the tournament, comes roaring back, like makes a bunch of birdies. Mito has to melt down for Justin to win. And other than that, since then, it's been really stinky in major championships. So we've been talking about Justin Thomas return to form this year. Nothing to show for it in majors. He won at the RBC Heritage, which I don't know how much stock you put in that. I don't have a lot of confidence in Justin at Bethpage. On a golf course, you got to keep driver in play. So sort of a successful year, I guess. There's certain lens you could look at it being a successful year, but I think in terms of the things you and I would value most, major championship performance, very far from a successful year.
Yeah, you look at JT's best performances too, and they aren't at golf courses where you would say it's the most demanding tee to green setup. He has the second place finish at the Amex, which is one of the least demanding setups. T6 at Phoenix, he always plays well at Phoenix. This is a golf course that's like a notorious horses for courses. T10 at Riv or T9 at Riv, good finish there.
Tory.
Oh yeah, Tory. It was Tory. Good point. I forgot about that. And then you had Valspar, second place finish at Valspar, fairly like it's like middle of the road. But if you look at where golf courses that really demand a lot from you tee to green, you've got Pebble Beach Pro-Am T48, and that's not super demanding, but that is a major championship golf course, Pebble Beach. Obviously, you need to be in the right positions. The Century, where you have a lot of uneven lies and hitting to targets that are up and down, he finishes T26. At the Players, it's a T33. Arnold Palmer, T36. The Masters, T36. We go to, Philly Cricket Club was a little bit of a spray it fest, and he finishes second there, like where it was okay to miss fairways. Memorial, a golf course in his peak, like when he was playing his best golf, was great for him. This year it's a T31. It's to me feels like when we get the more demanding setups, that's where he's really struggling, and it's a lot to do with the driver.
Yeah, I was going to say he can't really hit driver. I think that's the common denominator in all those, right? You can hit a lot of less than driver at the RBC Heritage where he won. Some of these Pete Dye golf courses, just in general, the way his designs have stood up, Amex, Sawgrass, RBC Heritage, Hilton Head, can kind of get away with hitting some irons off tees.
Yeah. All right. In an effort to move a little bit quicker here, yeah. I've got Joaquin Niemann on my list. I don't know if you had him.
I didn't, only because I don't expect a ton from him in majors at this point, but it's a good pick.
He won 5 times on LIV. He's been dominant. But and obviously I think some of this is just expectations, but some of it's the game, and it's an indictment on LIV. He's won 5 times on this tour. He's earned more money playing on LIV than Scottie Scheffler's earned. On the PGA tour. He's won 5 times. I don't want the win is a win. But you look at some of the people he's beating. In Virginia, he beats Lahiri and McDowell. Graham McDowell was doing broadcasting at the Open. last week he beat Bubba Watson, his runner up. And, obviously he had some where he beat Brooks in Singapore, and he beat Bryson in Mexico City. But then you go to the majors and it's just like, okay, so this guy's just dominating Live. And his T29, T8, miscut. And I don't know. It's just such a juxtaposition in terms of what he's doing on the Live Tour and how and the performances in majors. And my last one was Patrick Cantlay. 3 miscuts this year at majors. He was a top 10 player for a very long time, and I just wonder if we're in the era now of Patrick Cantlay being a top 30, top 40 guy. And that's just where we're at.
That would be hard to believe. I just view him as 2 different golfers. Like, he's a PGA Tour, he's a top 8 player on the PGA Tour, and when we get to majors, he's kind of a pumpkin. So,
but he hasn't been a top 8 player this year on tour.
No, I think he'll probably get back there, but yeah, we'll see. So my other disappointment.
Playoffs is P Cantlay time.
Yeah,
Caves Valley
brings out his best. My other disappointment was Tommy Fleetwood. I think you could make a case that Tommy Fleetwood's a top 5-6 player in the world right now. Still has absolutely nothing to show for it, and having one of the best years of his career. Still hasn't won. Choked away the Travelers there. His major performances, T21, T41, MC, and T16. This is Tommy Fleetwood's first year without a top 5 in a major since 2021. All the way through the bag, Tommy Fleetwood's good. He flushes it. Like, this is a player who should be in the mix at a major. I see you laughing. You're probably coming back with Tommy Fleetwood's just overrated, but this should be a golfer who's considered a top 10 player. And I think it's kind of hard to consider him that right now.
I was not going to come back with that. I was going to come back with, I think that Travelers is like lasting scar tissue.
I think you're right.
That is, when you see somebody of his talent that hasn't gotten it done on the PGA Tour, there's a level of doubt that has to be rattling around in that brain. And what happened at Travelers, the way it happened, has to have accentuated that doubt. And I just think it's going to be a minute until he gets back. I think that's just something that's going to shake him a little bit.
I'm worried if he'll ever get fully back from it, to be completely honest.
That was bad. It was hard. It was hard to watch.
He's 34. Like, we'll see. But this year, there should have been a little bit more. I hope he plays well at the Ryder Cup, because otherwise this is a sort of lost year when he was striping it.
Most impressive non-winners.
Do you want me to just list them off or go through them all? I don't know how quickly you're trying to move this along.
I assume we both have Harris English on our list.
Have Harris English. Only player besides Scottie to have 2 top 2s in a major this year. Also has a win to his name earlier in the year at Torrey Pines. I think of all the Americans, we mentioned Ben Griffin potentially being a good Ryder Cupper. I'd put Harris English very high on my list.
He should play a lot too.
Yeah. Like, how many Americans would you feel better about? I would feel way better about Harris English than Justin Thomas right now. Not even close.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's been awesome this year. And it's not just that. He's been, not just the T2s and the win. He's been good. He's been consistently good all year, and Harris English, and obviously, like, he overcame like a pretty gnarly injury. And I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be involved with one Ryder Cup and never back. And he's had a really, really good career on the PGA Tour, like a sneaky, like pretty stout career. I mean, he's got 6 wins. He's got a lot of he's been relevant for a long time.
Feels almost a little Billy Horschel, like kind of that level of relevant for 10 to 12 years, some legitimately big wins and a lot of consistent ball striking.
Yeah. So
another shout out, Matt Fitzpatrick. I think his recent resurgence, this was the 6th player in the world a couple years ago, major champion, won the U.S. Open
I
at
think
Brookline.
he predicted he would get to number 1. This feels like redemption for you, him coming back.
I don't know if I said number 1. Definitely said top 5. I might have said number 1. Matt Fitzpatrick was on an awesome trajectory, and I kind of lost some faith over the last couple of years when the ball striking really plummeted. He's had some injuries, but to see him with 2 top 10s in a major this year, legitimate chance of winning the Open Championship, a player who's been down in the dumps a little bit the last couple of years. Now, I mean, he's the favorite this week at the Wyndham. Not that that's the biggest tournament in the world, but Matt Fitzpatrick is close to being fully back, now up to ranked 40th in the world. Pretty exciting next 12 months for him if he can continue on this trajectory.
I mean, he plummeted. He was bad. And this is one of the things that makes golf great is like you see guys that golf is fleeting. Having the formula, having the belief and having the right feel in your golf swing is a fleeting aspect, and I always think that players get more compelling when they go through something. And Matt Fitzpatrick, to me, is a more interesting golfer for the human interest piece, because we saw him go from top of his career in fairly short order to near the bottom of his career with like where he got to. He was bad. I mean, it's hard to go from 6th in the world to 85th in the world like he was, and now coming back, I love when players have kind of these ups and downs. I think that Justin Thomas has gotten way more compelling, and I think like when he talks, there's a lot more substance to it now that he's gone through some struggles in his career and just come back. Like I think he's just more, that it's great to see when these guys come back from struggles.
And all due respect to Matt Fitzpatrick, he's not Dustin Johnson. He doesn't have the physical talent that he can just step back up out there. And like when you see Matt Fitzpatrick in person, it's kind of shocking that that's a top 10 player in the world or top 10 caliber player in the world. So I just think it's probably with a player like that a little bit more likely that when their game dips, they have a harder time recovering. They don't have the physical talent that some of these top guys in the world have. So to see him do it, that's just sheer hard work.
I've got Tyrrell Hatton on my list.
All right.
I think like a couple of years ago, we wondered, is Tyrrell Hatton just like a PGA Tour player or DP World Tour player who plays well? This year, I thought he had 2 pretty good chances to win majors. Obviously, he was very in the mix at the U.S. Open. Could have won that. And then I think at the Open Championship through 36 holes, he was one of the guys that you circled as like, this guy could win this tournament. And a couple of things didn't go, he didn't have the weekend he was looking at. But I think like, Tyrrell Hatton's turned himself from a guy that turned into a pumpkin at major championships to a guy that is on your kind of first page of favorites at every type of major venue. And he's done this. This is one of the few players that I think since going to LIV has gotten better.
He was in the mix at Pinehurst last year too.
Yeah. I just think he's turned himself into a really nice major championship player. And it was in, one of the hard things with the majors is the sample size is so small, but early in his career, it just wasn't happening. And that can be some of it. Sometimes like, I think like we make so much of some of this stuff, but like sometimes, having everything clicking for an individual week is really hard to do with golf. Like it's really hard to get everything working like the way you need it to work to contend deep into these majors for certain weeks. But Tyrrell Hatton, I think, has found something in the majors. And then my last one is Ben Griffin, who we talked about earlier. 2 top 10s, kind of out of nowhere. And I think like from my standpoint, like what makes me most high on Ben Griffin is the fact that he has played well at some of the most demanding setups in golf.
My last one is Bobby McIntyre. 2 top 10s this year and a real chance of winning the U.S. Open late. I think he might be at the top of my list of this golfer could win a major and it would surprise people who don't pay that much attention to golf, but he's one of the most likely. Legit great player now. He's won twice. He won the Scottish last year and the Canadian. Now he's taken his game to another level with major championship performance. Really good driver of the golf ball. 28 years old. I think that's somebody who next year is pretty primed to make a run in a major championship late. So really impressive step forward for Bobby this year.
Another person in the vein of Harris English, where you thought he might be a one and done Ryder Cupper, and now it looks like he might be a fixture on the team for years to come.
Could be one of their best players this year.
All right, Joseph. Any lasting major thoughts that you need to get off?
I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty incredible to reflect on this year that Rory McIlroy completed the career Grand Slam. Scottie Scheffler, potential all-time great, won twice. Like, it was a pretty incredible major championship season. So I think just appreciation for getting to watch, especially Scottie, in what feels like his prime, and that it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere soon. I think, what would you put the odds that he wins a major at least one next year? I think it's very high.
Probably even money.
At least.
Yeah. It's next year sets up great for him. Birkdale is lauded for its fairness. Shinnecock Hills, I think, is like pretty similar to Portrush, with how the targets and the rejecting nature of a lot of the greens, and just the conditions that you're going to play in, the topography, and then obviously Augusta National is great. And I mean. We could talk blue in the face, like, when you're the best tee to green player in the world,
can win anywhere.
And where doesn't work for you, I think going into next year, the Scottie, like, the list of players that have won multiple majors in multiple seasons is very small. I think it's like Tiger, Jack, and Ben Hogan.
That's a cool thing to keep an eye on.
If he wins multiple and he's at 6, I mean, then it's like, giddy up. Where are we going? I think he turns 30 at the U.S. Open next year. Maybe Sunday. I think Sunday. I saw that Sunday of the U.S. Open next year is his 30th birthday. And he could complete the Grand Slam that day.
Oh, so. Early storyline. That is some catnip for next year right there. Birthday, career, Grand Slam.
Birthday boy. 30th birthday. Big birthday too. Landmark birthday. So, all right, Joseph, thank you for all your on-the-ground coverage. You went to 2 majors this year, and everybody can read your stuff on Wednesday. I think you got a Q&A coming soon.
Got a Q&A coming with a golfer who was involved in a big scene at last year's Wyndham Championship. So excited about that.
Is that going up today or?
Thursday morning, yeah.
Thursday morning. So when most people will be listening to that, it'll be available. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Friday Golf Podcast. Big thanks to PJ Clark for editing and producing this podcast, and we will be back next week.